It's 12:07, and he's still not here. Okay. Well, we shall continue, even though not everyone is here. And as a matter of fact, there may be times where we're going to move through this kind of quickly. But again, that doesn't mean that we're taking away importance at all, and it also doesn't mean that you can't feel free to ask questions. And I hope everyone does feel comfortable enough to ask questions if I do go over it too quickly. Some things I might tell you, this is here, but it's not as important as something else, and might go over it quickly. But if you want to know, please feel free to say, and we shall go back. And I mean, truly, it's for your needs, not mine. So competency 5, oh, what's competency 5? Oh, classroom climate. Classroom climate. Do you think there's climate change in the classrooms these days? I don't know, is it man-made or is it, I don't know, we'll see. Yeah, so classroom climate, best practices. You might want to, you do have access to this, but if you know that these terms apply to classroom climate, that effective classrooms demonstrate this, this will help to resolve a lot of things. And I will say this again, bless you, but I will let you know right now, vary the activities, maintain the discipline. Vary the activities, maintain the discipline. What do I mean by that? I don't know, what do I mean? I mean, not necessarily keep them busy. It always should be manageable, but this is the thing. Yes, but when we have routines, there's nothing wrong with maintaining those routines. Every day, 9:05, we go to the bathroom. There's nothing wrong with that. When it's time for lunch, we line up this way, and then we go down the hall this way. When you need a pencil, this is what you do. The routines and discipline, we must be very consistent. Those don't need to change throughout. It's the instructional activities that change. Does that make sense? Yes. And so sometimes people get a little, not confused, but when they're taking the test. Activities, instructional activities, change them up. It's not every day, every class that you're doing cooperative grouping. No, there's a time for lecture. There's a time for independent work. There's a time for cooperative grouping. There's a time for role playing. You vary the instructional activities, but the classroom routines and discipline, no. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, so effective classrooms are supportive and productive. Everyone is responsible. They're safe and orderly. They have standards and routines. So again, those don't vary. I mean, something may come up and say, okay, oh, we need to change this, okay, but it's not like for classroom rules and things like that that they change all the time. Transitions, they need to be there for what we know to do from when we go from one task to another, and then we encourage that self-discipline. This is self-discipline. All these things now, just to let you know, are on your evaluations for T-tests. Yes?
It's good practice to stop your lecture every time you have a new student and go over the routines and procedures.
I don't know. I don't know. It depends on how your classroom is set up, how old the kids are, how well your other 20 students are responding to the rules and to the procedures.
Well, us as a campus, it's like every time you have a student, you're supposed to cover and practice just a few moments so that students, you know, know what is expected, and then the other students model.
We'll kind of talk about this. There are different ways to approach it. There's nothing wrong with going over the routines and the rules for the classroom on a regular basis, especially if needed. I mean, you know, now we're in the second 6 weeks of school. We're in the second or third week of the second 6 weeks of school. And so for a lot of kids, maybe in some classrooms, they may need a reminder, hey, let's go over the rules and regulations again. What do we do this, and what are the rules, what are the consequences? And in some classes, if they've been following it, you don't have to do it as much. A new kid comes in, that gives a good opportunity to, okay, let's review the rules. Matthew is new, so let's go over the rules and let's help Matthew adjust to here. So what is the first rule? And you ask the kids, and certainly there's a time for that. But I don't know, again, you know, I would never say always, but it can be a very positive thing. Take a few minutes, as you say, go over it. But sometimes, you know, you may not need to. You know, in 12th grade, you can say, here's the list of the rules, you know, and talk to the kid a little bit on the side, say, this is what we do. But to go over them with all your other 12th graders, where they're like, hey, man, we knew this since when? You know, it just depends on the situation. Am I answering your question? It can be a very positive thing. The one thing that is important, though, is that everyone know and understand the rules of the classroom and the transitional activities. So, you know, if there's a question about if someone doesn't understand them, yeah, go over them again. Am I answering your question? Yeah. Okay, so in your responses on the PPR, if these things are in there, that's going to be a good thing for your students. So are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Have you gone over that? Yeah, so I don't need to go over it too much. Just know that certain needs need to be met, or certain things need to be met in order to flourish, in order to grow, in order to bloom, in order to live. And they are hierarchical. There are certain things that need to be in place before we can move on. So when we look at his hierarchy of needs, if the kids coming to school don't have a place to live, if they don't have food to eat, we can't expect them to be focused on learning. They're too worried about surviving, right? So, you know, some people criticize schools for giving shoes to kids or giving breakfast to kids, but there's a need for it. If they don't have breakfast before coming to school and we don't serve that breakfast, by lunchtime, their focus is not on learning. Their focus is on that growling in their stomach and what they're going to do to satisfy that, right? Safety, incredible. It wasn't until my youngest children really were at the junior high level that I realized how much safety plays a role in how children learn at school. I mean, safety in their own lives, of course, but even at school. I was working for a different school district at the time, and they had 4 different campuses. And before they came with me, I had a chance to look at all the campuses. I chose this one for a number of reasons, but the discipline was very good. It wasn't, you know, brutal dictatorship discipline. It was discipline where the kids were self-directed, but it was so safe. And I realized, man, the kids here feel free to learn. You go into some schools and it's almost like, man, I don't want to be here, you know? You don't feel safe. And when you don't feel safe, your focus is not on learning, right? So then, belonging, need to feel belonged and feel loved. Anyway, I don't necessarily need to go over all of these if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But what needs to be noted here for the PPR is that if certain things aren't being met in that student's life, don't expect learning to take place. That's not a priority. If they don't have food, if they don't have appropriate clothes, if they don't feel safe, then they're not going to be learning, right? So then we get to the higher level, the intellectual achievement, aesthetic appreciation, self-actualization, and transcendence. And so again, it's called hierarchy because you do start at the lower level and you work your way up. And we can't get to that next level unless those needs at that particular level are being met. Okay? Any questions about that? We cool? We're ready to go on to number 5? Okay. Competency 5, classroom climate is on page 5. It is, they are questions 13 through 15. Should we try for 5 minutes this time? Should we try to knock a minute off? Okay, let's see. Again, we can always expand it if necessary, but let's try it for 5 minutes. Ready and go. Finish, you can certainly turn to your partners to discuss. It's been 4 minutes, Shu. Are we ready? Yeah? All right, cool, man. You did it in less than 4, really. Okay, let's see. Number 13, Margaret wishes to employ high expectations. What should she do to guide her students to achieve their best? What do you think? C. C is correct. Very good. Anybody haven't? Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. I used to always do that, and I'm not doing it anymore. Did I do it when we met before? Or no? Yeah. I don't know. Are you making fun of me? Yes. No, Okay, ding, 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 bravo. Very well done. Yeah. Okay, see. Yeah, okay. I gotta be careful with this group, man. Okay, what do you know about beaches in Florida? How could this question stimulate student engagement? Number 14, A, B, C, or D?
C.
Oops, wait.
D.
What?
No, I said C. C.
Okay. Letter A is out. Why? They all have first-hand knowledge, not necessarily, right? Okay, B is out. Why?
More interest.
The teacher is more interested in topics that represent easy learning. Oh, just get rid of that, right? So now it's between C and D.
Well, she's asking what do you know about beaches in Florida. So why would she be thinking? Why does she imply that teachers believe that all students been to Florida? That hasn't been.
It is.
So what are you saying?
It's C.
Ding, ding, ding! Right here. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. That you do it better than I do. Maybe. Yeah. I'm just going to point to you and say, yeah, that is a ding, ding, ding. It is C because.
She wants to know what the prior.
Yeah, let's look at these just for a second. If you said D, I can see it says, the question implies that the teacher believes, we got to be careful there. We can look at implications, but I don't know if it implies, what do you know? It doesn't say, okay, since you've been there, what did you experience? There's a difference between those two things, right? But let's look at C. It addresses the concept that many students will have some prior knowledge of and offers students an environment where no single answer is expected. Yeah. The better answer is C. Better answer is C. Okay, and then we have number 15. Mary Ellen assesses the effectiveness of her classroom learning community design. A, B, C, or D?
C.
Say it for yourself. That's it. Letter C is correct.
Randy, I'm taking all your advice.
Oh no, Randy, I still love you very much. I do. Yeah, no, Randy, nobody could ever replace you. Don't worry about it. Okay. Yeah, let's look at 15. Did everyone have C, or is there a question about this one? Please, seriously ask. We're cool with C for 15? Okay, so we did well in this one. Great. Okay, let's move on to competency 6. Now let me just say, competency 6, we'll probably do the whole thing. There might be a couple things I might skip over. Definitely when we get to 8. We will, but 6, there's possibility. Because classroom management, we know the big idea already. Okay? Now, here, you may or may not know all these terms, but this operant conditioning, do you see that? Operant conditioning? That is a big term. Sometimes it comes out on the test, but the concept comes out a lot. Operant conditioning. And basically what that is reinforcing desirable behaviors. And when you do that, then kids know what is expected of them and they're motivated to do well. That's what operant conditioning is. Reinforcing positive behavior, negating negative behaviors. Okay? Does that make sense? That operant conditioning. You're conditioning students to behave in a certain way. But that's it for classroom management, is that we want to reinforce those desirable behaviors so that students do well. This is a big thing. Keep frequently used supplies readily available. Please do that. I can't tell you how many times I heard teachers complain, or I've seen it in a classroom where a teacher says, well, you didn't bring your pencil, so you won't be able to participate. Oh, come on, man. You know, we're there for the kid to learn. And if it's a problem on a regular basis, help the kid to maintain a pencil in his pocket or in his pencil pouch or something. But to not allow him to participate in learning because he doesn't have a pencil, just give him the darn pencil, right? So keeping those frequently used supplies readily available for kids to get up quietly, go get a pencil when they need it, get a piece of paper, whatever, please do that. In dealing with any problem, the first step is to talk to the student to determine awareness of the problem, then help the student to develop an awareness of the problem before coming to a solution. Now again, this is where real life and expectations may clash, right? We're in a classroom with 20 students, there's a problem. Sometimes you just need to nip it in the bud and say stop or whatever. But when there's a real issue, it's very difficult on children if they feel as though you're making a judgment without understanding the problem. And sometimes they don't understand the problem. And so truly, the first step is to talk to the students to determine if there is an awareness of what that child is doing to cause the problem. And for you to get as much information as possible in order to deal with it. Again, I know the reality is sometimes the kid is playing around, stop it, you know, but he did the, stop it, you know, and sometimes that's appropriate, but when it's really a problem, you need to be careful and get to the root. Okay, this is what we were talking about earlier. Don't vary the routines, don't vary the discipline, but vary the instructional activities and use a variety of materials and strategies and activities and approaches. Peer tutoring is recommended for dealing with misbehaving students. What's peer tutoring? What is it?
It's like when they help each other.
That's right. When there's one student kind of helping another student. So this comes in very well when you have new students coming in. You get that buddy there to help them acclimate to the new place. But also, when a student is maybe having a problem and misbehaving, give them a peer buddy to help him either express it so that he's not acting it out, or you'll assign somebody appropriately to help them work through it. Always state classroom rules positively. And again, you may see something different in the schools, but it's much better to say, instead of saying, don't run in the hallways, it's much better to say, walk in the hallways, right? You don't want to put rules in a negative way. You want to state them positively. No hitting. It's much better to keep your hands to yourself, right? Does that make sense? This is a big one, and I don't want to spend a lot of time, but holy cow. Involve students in creating classroom rules. There used to be something called, what was it called? I can't remember. But it was huge. It was assertive discipline. That's what it was, assertive discipline. And part of assertive discipline was day one, students come into your classroom, you have the rules up on the wall, and you go over the rules and make sure they understand them, right? What I found to be much, much better than that is day one, you don't have the rules up in the classroom. You have the kids come in and you say, what kind of rules? We have to have some rules, don't you think? I mean, we're going to be in here for 175 days, all 25 of us together in a small room. We better have some rules so we don't kill each other, right? What do you think? What would be some good rules? And you know what? It's very interesting. What I found is you open up the discussion and you think, oh, kids don't want to have rules. They do. We would fill up all the boards with all these rules. Don't spit, don't run, don't call my mother this. And you know, I mean, it was all these rules. Yeah. I mean, I can call your mother, but you can't call my mother, you know, this type of stuff. But we would just list them all and then we'd say, well, how can we put this into about 5 rules for the classroom? And stating them positively. Once they felt, and they really were, but once they felt, which is even more important, that they were part of the rule-making process, holy cow, they followed those rules. Much more likely to follow the rules, right? So for management style, you look at content, conduct, and covenant. So what you'll teach, how you'll get them involved in it, how you'll have your rules and behaviors, and then the covenant is people signing off on it. These are the rules and I agree. So again, what do we vary here? The content, the conduct, or the covenant? What do we vary on a regular basis? The content. How we teach. We're going to vary our activities. We're going to vary our strategies. We're going to vary those types of things in our classroom. But we do not vary the conduct. We don't change rules all the time. We don't allow them to get away with it now and then not then, and this kid yes, this kid no. The routines, the transitions, those need to be firmly in place. Does that mean we can't change them? Well, we can change them if it's necessary, but we want to be careful. We vary the activities, we do not vary the routines. I know this seems pretty self-evident, but boy, you'd be surprised walking into some places and seeing some of the rules that they have. The classroom rules, remember, please, 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 and I know all of you will, they are not about you. They are not about you as the teacher. Are we teacher-centered or student-centered here? Thank you for that answer. That's a big
Ding, ding, ding.
thank you. Yes. That's a huge. Come on. Okay, Randy, you're back up there. Randy, you're back up on top. You better work at it. You better work at it. Okay. So, yeah, this is not about you, you know, and I've seen teachers write rules like, you will not talk unless you are spoken to by the teacher. It's like, come on, you know, is that reasonable for them never to speak unless the teacher is spoken? It's because, well, I don't like it when kids are talking and I'm talking. You know, you got to be careful. It's not about you. So reasonable and necessary that the kids understand it and that they're on board with them. And this, that they're consistent with your instructional goals. Again, if we're going to look for kids to be interacting, we shouldn't have a rule up there that you will not speak unless you have your hand raised and are called upon. Because then when they're interacting and you're walking around, everybody's going to be looking at you waiting to talk. No, that's not a reasonable rule, right? So just be careful. And I was guilty of the very last one. Holy, I mean, really, I would let kids drink water and bring food into the classroom as long as it helped them to learn. And then I found out from our principal, no, you can't do that, Mr. Myers. I was like, okay, we got to hide it, kids. No. If it's not the school rules, be careful, right? So, okay, so why is it that kids misbehave? It's not because they're terrible, rotten, awful kids, which is sometimes what we want to think about kids who misbehave, but really it's because their needs aren't being met. They don't have the love or control or freedom or really the fun in order to allow them to be not misbehaving. Conflict resolution. Let's look at types and strategies of conflict resolution. So, you know, there are different types of conflict. And looking at the United States right now as a whole, among the adults, you know, a lot of it has to do with beliefs. Wow, you know. What we believe is the right direction for this country. And I mean, people are getting angry and it's very conflictual. It's not just having a discussion, there's real conflict now. Personal property. Oh my gosh, you've probably seen this a lot in the classrooms if you've been in there, and if not, you'll recognize it. He took my pencil. Okay, that's personal property, that causes conflict. Personal differences, territory, people invading the space. He got too close to me, sir. And I don't like it when people are there. And this is the big one, perceptions. Perceptions. And we still do this as adults. We tend to interpret things the way we want to interpret them, or we think we're interpreting them, and the other person may have had a completely different message that he or she wanted to give. But these are the types of conflicts, and these happen in schools as well. So again, why is it important to know what type of conflict it is? I mean, if kids are messing around fighting, let's say, they're conflicted, they're having a conflict, why is it important to know what kind it is?
To solve it.
To try to resolve it, absolutely. We don't want the conflict to continue, especially if it is interfering with learning, right? We are there for the learning. So here are some strategies. I won't go over all of them, except for you always want to use positive words, and that's tough. I'm going to say, don't be sarcastic. You might want to write that down. You do not want to be sarcastic, generally speaking, with students. And that's not just during a conflicted period, that's at all. I love sarcasm sometimes, but with kids, you want to be careful. Even here, I know I've been a little sarcastic at times, and I try to be a little careful. But you always want to use positive words, don't be sarcastic. Always seek additional information. Now when I say this, it's not just for you to get that information, which is very, very important if you need to come to some decision. But why else might this be important? Because it helps students to vocalize and to think through what the problem is as well. Does that make sense? So it's not just about you getting more information, which is what it is about, but it's also about students vocalizing what is really distressing them so that then they have a better understanding to see if it really is something. Help students to resolve differences themselves, right? You can make an executive decision to say, no, you do this, you were wrong, you get this, you can do that. But generally, if you can, and this is for the test, you want them to resolve the differences among themselves. Okay? Now the last one I do have to mention, and that is, if students are really at it with each other, not just with words, but physical, you need to separate them. And even sometimes with words, if they're starting to talk about their mothers or they're using bad language or something, you separate those kids. You know, you want them to resolve differences themselves, but if they're at a point where they're too hot-headed or there could be damage, you must separate them. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So whenever there's anything physical, you don't even think twice. Safety is number one. You separate those kids. If you feel as though the words are starting to escalate, you say, let's separate for now, we'll come back to this later, let's calm down, right? But that's a responsibility. If one of the kids were to get hurt and it came out that you were just allowing them to keep at it, then you could be affected.
What would happen if the teacher's the one that's getting, like, he separates them, but then they start beating up on the teacher?
Yeah, you mean like all of a sudden they were at each other and they're saying, hey,
well,
let's
because
gang
he
up
tried
on the
to
teacher.
separate them.
Yeah.
Like I had a friend separate them, and then he got hit in his private several times.
Yeah, no, that can happen, and now more than ever, kids and their parents are being responsible for that. But I will say this too, is that what needs to be done is you need to go through a training, and I'm serious when I say this. Special education teachers go through a training called restraining a child, and you cannot restrain a child if you have not been through that training, because there are certain ways. If you have not gone through the training and you're separating kids and restraining that child from the other one, you could be doing damage to that child, and if that child hits you, that child may claim self-defense. So if you've been through the training and you've utilized the proper techniques for restraining, and that child hurts you, then that child would be responsible. And many times the parent is responsible. Am I answering your question? So yeah, I mean, if there's danger involved to students, you know, it's almost like, hey man, I'm not getting involved with that. Let them, you know, I don't want to get hurt, but we must as adults. We must, and if we get hurt in the process, we'll look at our recourse later. But we must separate them. Okay, so for room arrangement, remember we're looking at classroom management. Again, I'm not going to read all of this. You look at this, but the basic idea is that generally speaking, straight rows are not the best classroom setup for chairs. Straight rows are not, for a number of reasons. Even this is better because there's a little bit of a U shape here, and you can see what she's saying. But if I'm standing up in front and I'm in rows, the girl in the first seat in the front gives an answer. The kid 6 rows back or 6 seats back may not hear very well. There's definitely no eye contact to be engaged. And so it's best that in a classroom, as much as possible, kids are able to see each other and to interact, right? And that's it for 6. We're done with competency 6. Well, we're not quite done with competency 6. We have 3 questions to answer. Okay? And those questions are 16, 17, and 18. What do you think? 5 minutes again? Or did we do 5 minutes or 6 last time?
5.
5. Okay, and we were done even like in 4 or so. But let's do 5. ready? If you really don't want to underline and all that, okay, but you got to do well. If you want to underline and stuff, it's still cool though. Ready, go. Okay, we about ready? Do we need another couple minutes? Or are we ready? We're ready? Okay, well, let's see. Let's see how we do. I'm very interested in seeing. Okay, so the 6th grade science teacher, what's he seeing? 2 students, what? They don't participate effectively. What should he do?
C.
A, B, C, or D?
C.
C!
Ding, 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 ding.
Yes, so, yeah. Oh, she's good. Okay, now Daryl works with his mentor. Oh, he's in a position like you guys, starting off teaching, to establish routines and procedures. The first week, what is the most important reason why this is wise for establishing a strong learning climate? A, B, C, or D?
C. B.
Okay, well, before we go there, let's look. So, did anybody have A? Good. Good. Because it's not about Daryl, right? It's not about Daryl. So, he'll have more time for planning with, no, it's not about him. So, take away A. Did anybody have D?
No.
No, so let's take that away. Capitalize on their interest and motivation. Again, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but does that really have to do anything with establishing routines and procedures? No. So it seems like it's between B and C. Okay? So B, somebody read B out loud.
Students will know exactly how each day's instructional activities will occur and in what manner the teacher will always present lessons. Always.
It's always
present lessons.
Hello? Wrong.
Wrong. Out of here.
Out of here. What did we say about instructional activities? Do we vary those?
Yes.
Yes, if it's always the same? No. Routines and rules, don't vary those. But instructional activities, boy, every blessed day going in and we're going to do the same darn thing. Please. You like that idea, huh? Okay, no, generally speaking, I may have to accommodate instruction for you to do it exactly, but for the rest of the class, no, right? There you go. So the best answer for 17 is?
C.
There we go, okay. 18, Alma, this is about you.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I know, look at that. You noticed 2 students seemingly high levels of conflict. What did you do about it, Alma?
I did A. I divided them.
She did A, and she gets the ding, ding, ding. That's right. Guide students to work together for a mutual agreement to solve their differences. It's right there, right? Again, it's tougher to do than it is to say, right? But this is what we need to do. Remember, the context of the ideal world, right? Does that make sense? And seriously, please ask, because hopefully this is a good way of knowing why things are correct. Did anybody want clarification on B, C, or D here about why those are not the correct answers? Feel free to ask.
I just have a question.
Yes.
It has to do with that, but when we do the PPR exam, is it going to say competency 7?
No. No.
It's like the content.
No, it does not tell you which competency you're doing.
Oh, this.
And they are all, yeah, they're not, it's not going to be 1, 2, 3 is competency 1. I know, we're doing this a little differently. This is not how the test is, but that's why I encourage you to please study and practice. Today, I'm hoping gives you a good handle on it, but this isn't enough. You'll want to practice and see. They jump back and forth among the competencies, but when you do it, then it will tell you how you did in each competency to know where you need to study more. Okay? Does that answer your question? Yeah? Okay. Competency 7, lucky 7. Once we're done with this, we're more than halfway through. Oh my gosh, and we only have a couple hours left. Jeez. But we'll do it. Yeah, 17 is very, or 17, 7 is very small, okay? 8 is bigger, that's when we may have to cut some stuff out of. But competency 7 is on what these guys are doing right here very, very well. Well, communication. Collaborate. Right? Communication.
Learning, sir.
I know, that's why I said you were doing it very well. I said, yeah. Alma, you did excellently on that last question. I mean, that's what you do is you get the students to resolve their differences, and now you communicate.
I'm being the mediator over here.
Yeah, well, you're communicating well.
Jessica's already telling us bye.
Okay, so communication. This is really where we're talking about communication between the teacher and students, okay? We'll look at community engagement later on and your communication with parents and your colleagues, etc. But non-threatening is a big thing. Do not put kids on the spot. Do not put kids on the spot. And if we back a child into a corner, the only place that child has to go is roaring forward at you. So always it needs to be non-threatening. That doesn't mean we lower our expectations of the child, but we have to be non-threatening for this. This is another one. We may have talked about this with the reading as well, but use specific praise. What does that mean? Use specific praise.
Praise one person for something that they did good.
Or I like the
general praise. Oh, everybody did awesome.
Right. It can be a general thing, but I mean for the whole class. But
I like
yeah.
the way you're sitting down.
Right.
I really like the way Jose is sitting on the carpet.
Exactly. If you just say, "Hey, good job," That's not as effective as you did an excellent job of answering number 7 in a complete sentence. It's very specific. You tell them what it was that they did. As Alma said, I love the way Jose is sitting with his legs crossed on the floor ready to learn. That's very specific.
So all the other ones pick up and they start sitting.
Right.
I'm sitting like that, teacher.
Yes.
I'm sitting like that.
And it can be for the whole group though too. You could say, look at this. Everyone in our class is sitting with their legs crossed, sitting with their back straight, ready to learn. I love it. But being specific in that, okay? Lots of times, if you have a group of 25 kids and you're expecting everyone to participate, those English language learners who aren't feeling real proficient in their language, they're going to feel a little less threatened in a smaller group. If they're in a big group, oh my gosh, I better not say anything because I may be wrong in how I say it. And in a small group, they might feel more comfortable, right? This is another one, and our superintendent has been big on this lately too. And it's a good thing. Call on students randomly so that all students participate. Okay, and there are different ways to do it. Popsicle sticks. Now there's Dojo in the classroom. Do any of you use Dojo, or you've seen that?
Yeah.
Where it randomly picks students to answer the question. Why is that important to randomly choose students to answer questions?
So
let's keep them accountable.
So they don't feel like you're picking on them.
Yeah, you're right. You know, teachers tend to, especially when they're being observed, call on the kids who have their hands raised and who they know will answer the question appropriately, right? And that gives everybody else, lets them off the hook. If I don't know the answer, I don't have to raise my hand, or I don't even want to think about it, I won't raise my hand. No. And they'll always call on Alma anyway, you know, because Alma knows everything. So, no, if it's random, then everybody has to think about it. And that goes into that wait time then too, right? You ask a question, you wait, you call in kids randomly. That is a best practice. We talked about the wait time, and this is the other thing too. Sometimes there's just a right answer, right? Who was the 44th President of the United States? Okay, there is a right answer to that, right? Do you know the answer to that?
No.
Who? Obama. That's right. Obama was the 44th president.
I heard 34.
Oh, that's why you didn't know. Okay. So, yeah, there is one. But these divergent questions stimulate critical thinking. So you want to throw those out there every once in a while. So who was a better president? George Bush the first or George Bush the second? Right? 41 or 43? Well, I mean, okay, boy, it seems like people do have an opinion. I would ask you to explain that and why, and maybe go off on a tangent, you know? Things that are more open-ended where there's an evaluation. So who was it, 41st or 43rd?
41.
41? Okay, everybody's in agreement about that? Okay.
How could we establish a like error-friendly environment?
This is huge, and I love the question. How can we establish a non-threatening, conducive environment so that people aren't afraid to make a mistake? Right?
If you want to make them feel comfortable in the class.
Absolutely. It is. It's going to fall a lot on the teacher to establish that. And again, depending on the grade level, there's nothing wrong with being very explicit about that. In this classroom, we value people for their contribution, even if we don't have it 100% correct. We're all learning. That's the cool thing about school, man. If we already knew everything, why the heck do we need to be here? We don't. We're all learning. And you know what? Some of us are better in math. Some of us may be better in reading. Some of us may be great in science and not so great in social studies. We're all different. And you know what? We all bring a unique perspective. And so, if we make a mistake, ni modo. That's just the way it's going to be here. You know, when we take a test at the end, we're going to hope we get them all correct. But before we take that test, we may make a lot of mistakes, and that's all right. That's how we learn. Did you know that lots of times we learn by making mistakes? Do you believe it? We don't like to make mistakes, but that's how we learn lots of things. Anyway, so I mean, you can start establishing the classroom culture like that, and always, 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 I think when you do a lot of pre-activities where you're looking like at anticipation guides, when you're looking at KWL, when you're looking at pre-reading strategies, prior knowledge, there's absolutely nothing wrong with making a mistake. You say that. We don't know right now. That's what's cool about this. But by the end, we'll be right. And I won't want anyone in here to make fun of anyone for making a mistake. We'll all make mistakes. When I make a mistake, I don't want you to be criticizing me, because I will. I'll make a mistake, and I guarantee you, when you make a mistake, I won't criticize you. We'll learn from it. But then that needs to be followed up all the time.
Well, that's actually what I was gonna, like, this question has to kind of sort of do with. I know that in our previous presentations, we've been encouraged to make sure that especially grammatically, all of the stuff that we put up is perfect, almost. But would you encourage teachers to maybe make purposeful minor mistakes so that our students kind of correct this, and that's more of an equal?
No.
It's like I can make mistakes too?
Not if it's up. Not if you're putting it up. No. There is a time where you say, you know what, now I'm going to put up a couple of sentences, and I'm telling you right now, there are a couple of mistakes. I want you to look real hard.
Yeah.
And I want you to see.
Mm-hmm.
But a poster or something, you know, I may have made a mistake here. I hope not. I didn't want to, because this is up there for a learning purpose, and I don't want it to be incorrect. So no. You know, the Aztecs, when they made weavings and artistry, you know, those things were just so fantastic and wonderful. And at the end, if they thought it was pretty much perfect, they had put in a wrong color at the very end, just because, you know, la perfección se queda con Dios, you know. I can't do anything perfect. But we don't want to do that as teachers. We want to do it as best as we can. Now, if we make a mistake and a student points it out to us, you'd say, wow, excellent job. And you may even lie and say, well, I did that on purpose for you to check it. But, you know, no, we don't want to do that purposely.
Okay.
I don't think. Unless you're saying, today I'm gonna put some stuff up there and I want you to look for the mistakes, then it's fine. But not generally speaking. Look at that, we're done with 7. We're done with 7, I know, isn't that wonderful? So now we should be on what? 19, 20, and 21, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
It is, all right. It's so nice to be right. Okay, competency 7, communication, 5 minutes, or should we go down to 4?
4 minutes.
Keep it at
All right. There we go, 4 minutes. Let's go to 4. If we need to go up to 5, that's fine. But let's try it at 4 minutes. You ready? Go. hopefully we can extend if necessary. We're under the 3.333 time frame anyway for each question. Yeah, certainly feel free to discuss with your partners when you're done to see if you coincide or concur.
The Italian Express. That place is good for like 2 people to buy lunch. Yeah. I really like their fettuccine. I like fettuccine burgers.
Okay, let's see what we have. And again, hopefully, if we do not have the correct answers, that we go over this in order to figure them out, and hopefully it's helping us get to a better place. It's not just to get the right answer, it's to understand it, right? So let's see. Number 19, what would be the best thing, bless you, for Jeremy to say when he's moving the pairs into cooperative groups? And this kind of goes to your question. He wants to make sure that all students feel safe in taking risks in their learning and use their creativity effectively. So what do you think, A, B, C, or D?
C.
C is a big dinger. That's it, absolutely. C, bravo. Anybody have a question about that one? Please ask. Okay, now number 20. This one I can tell you at times gives some people fits. Maybe not fits, but this is the one that sometimes people are like, but sir. Well, let's see what we have. So, and I know you've read this, but could somebody read this out loud? I think it would be important for somebody to read this out loud so that we know we're all hearing the same thing.
Which of the following observations during small group work should be of greatest concern for Casey to address initially?
Okay, that was great for the question. Could you read the sentence that goes right before it as well?
Yeah. Casey wants to improve the communication skill of her 10th grade students.
Now, is anybody still underlining the question and circling important information?
Yeah.
Good. Oh, Randy, I love that guy. Look at that. Yes, sir. I hope it's true. I'm coming around to check. Okay, good. Now, in that sentence.
I'll watch for Randy.
Thank you. Oh, yes, I love you too. Okay, so before the question, in that sentence, what was circled? What did you circle? Improve communication skills, 10th grade. Absolutely. So this is the focus, right? Improve communication skills. And this is where I think, this is why it's still good to look at those key words here so we don't get thrown off. Okay? So then, you did an excellent job of reading it. So what should be of greatest concern here? What do you think, A, B, C, or D?
B.
A. The answer is, what does that mean?
D.
Oh, no, it's A. A is the best answer, yeah. Okay, so, and I understand why this is tough. So let's see.
Greatest concern is what threw me off.
The thing is, they're arguing, they're communicating.
Okay, greatest concern, remember, you know, as a parent, I have 4 children, and now I have 4 grandchildren, and each child, they cause a different concern, right? And so, what is the greatest concern? Well, it depends. Are you talking about Olivia, or are you talking about Audrey, or are you talking about Sophia, or Isaac? Right? Now, in this case, what are we talking about?
Communication.
Improve communication skills. So look at this. B, in some groups, certain students talk only to one or two others. Well, they're communicating. They're communicating. C, at times students speak out when others are concentrating on a task. That's terrible. But that's not a problem of communication skill. That's a problem of interruption. Right? I mean, I would think that's of concern in my class, but he's talking about communication skills. In letter D, in one group, students seem to argue more than target completion of their assignment. Boy, they're communicating. They may not be getting their homework done or their work done, but if they're arguing, they're communicating. Right? So again, this is why it's important to see what those key words are. I would say B, C, and D, those are all problems. And I would not like any of those problems. But if he wants to improve communication skills, or she wants to improve communication skills, her greatest concern is students do not listen to their classmates and frequently talk over each other. That is non-communication right there.
That seemed like an elementary kind of thing. Like that answer for.
Oh boy, I've seen it at secondary.
Yeah.
Are you talking elementary, secondary? Or are you talking about basic
primary,
problems?
yeah, like the elementary level.
Yeah.
And these are 10th graders, so that's why
Because
they're talking, even though they're talking over each other.
But if they're not listening, isn't listening part of communication?
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. And again, you're right. And this is why sometimes those paraprofessionals, as I mentioned at the beginning, had difficulty because they say, I didn't experience this. That's not how 10th graders are. Well, they're saying they are. So, you know, we need to follow what they say. You're right. I mean, if you've never experienced it, it's tough to maybe relate. But I guess the big thing is communication skills. You know, if my wife and I, which we never do, but if we were to argue, at least we're communicating. You know, I might think she's not understanding me, but at least she's listening to me when I yell, and I'm listening to her when she yells. We never do that, I swear. We don't. But we're communicating, right? If I'm watching TV and she's trying to concentrate on a task, that's very interruptive, but that's not a communication problem, right? So again, this is why I did want it to be read, which you did wonderfully, and to see that he wants to, or she wants to improve the communication skills. Okay, are we somewhat convinced now that A is the right answer? And that's why it is important to look at all. Okay, so Mary is going to do that science objective about the students know the plants are made up of parts, and that if one is damaged, the plant may suffer and possibly die. In the question, what words did you underlined the question? But what words did you circle?
First grade.
First grade.
Introducing the concept.
Science objective.
Effectively, efficiently, good. Science. One key word that I haven't heard yet.
Introducing.
I would say introducing the concept. Introducing. Because again, some of these are all good things to do, but for introducing the concept to first graders, I think that's crucial to know. A, B, C, or D?
B.
B is correct. Letter B is in boy. Bring a slightly damaged plant. Demonstrate the parts. Now, I hope you disregarded A right away.
Yeah.
Tell the first graders several times, not going to work, right? Letter D, we said generally list. If you're just listing, it's not going to work, right? So let's look at B and C. C, sketch the parts on a dry erase board and draw lines from each part to the plant to the proper word. That seems like a good thing to do, but for introducing, not as effective as actually bringing the manipulative there, right?
You're presenting and then you do.
Yes? Are we cool with that one? Okay, we're more than halfway done with our competencies in this. Oh my gosh, it's 2:15. Are we going to be able to get it done? I hope so. Well, I don't know about that. Okay, competency 8. Let me just tell you, competency 8 is rather long. there are going to be a couple of these that we stop on, and some of them that we're just going to kind of keep moving through. However, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I've seen and I've gotten feedback from students about what is currently on this, and some of these things aren't emphasized as much as they used to be. And also, you have this there to go back and use as a study guide in case. But if you want me to go back and talk about it, okay. Best practices incorporate student interest into instruction. This is nothing new. We've said this many, many times, right? Please, please, please make sure you do that. Employ hands-on learning. This is not the first time we've talked about that. Using manipulatives, using kinesthetic approach. Make sure that there's something concrete as well. Activate prior knowledge when presenting new information. And I do want to say, activate prior knowledge, and you could put / create prior knowledge. Okay? Create prior knowledge. So again, going back to that question about that the teacher had about the beaches in Florida, some kids may not have been to Florida, but as a group think, those kids who have been to Florida and know something about Florida, they're talking about it, thinking about it, that's giving me background knowledge. So sometimes we tap into it. We generally like to tap into it, but sometimes we have to help create it as well. Does that make sense? Okay, then going back to this one, inquiry, discovery, and cooperative learning to develop that critical thinking. So again, this is where it starts naming a bunch of types, and we're not going to go over all of them, but we should know these major models of instruction: direct, indirect, and cooperative. Generally, I think we know about direct and cooperative. What's direct instruction? Direct. What is that?
Lecture style.
Lecture style, modeling style. You're basically telling the kids what they need to know. It can be lecture, but it can also be demonstration as well, right? Cooperative learning in small groups where they're kind of teaching each other or completing a project, right? And that's where they're learning. Now, it's sometimes indirect instruction that we may have some difficulty with, but probably not. What do you think indirect instruction is? Any idea? Indirect instruction. There'll be a list of different things there, but basically indirect instruction is when you don't have that objective posted saying, today you will learn this. That's usually very direct, right? Indirect, you kind of set up a situation where they're kind of figuring out things and then they come to a conclusion. Does that make sense? So again, direct is where you have that objective listed, TLW, name, 3 reasons the Texians got involved in the Battle of the Alamo. You're telling them right now, this is what you're going to learn today, guys. This is what you're going to be able to do. In indirect instruction, you might say, you know what, today we're going to read a couple of passages, and at the end of the passages, I want you to tell me what it is that we can take away from this type of thing, and then help guide them to whatever it is that your objective is. Does that make sense? Okay. So again, for direct instruction, we're not going to go into all these expository, memory, mastery, lecture. You have a chance to go over these and see what they are. And again, you will rarely see expository on the test anymore. It may come out, but it's more just direct instruction. And this is good to know, but we're not going to go over it too much. Okay, indirect instruction, I just want to talk a little bit about a couple of things here. And that is concept attainment and discussion. So discussion we know is good, right? Discussion we know is good. Well, so is concept concept attainment. And this is it. This is where you start defining the attributes of a concept. So you might say, let's describe with little kids. Let's describe this radish. How can you describe the radish? Oh, it has this and this, this. Okay, now let's describe this bean. And they describe the bean. And then you say, okay, let's describe this. It's a carrot. Okay, it's a carrot. So then you're describing, what can you tell us about all of them? Or I should have probably used a carrot, a radish, and a potato. That these are vegetables that grow underground, or something like that, where you're describing, you're defining the concept, you're describing the concept, and then you come to a final conclusion. That's concept attainment. Does that make sense? I know I'm going over it quickly, and I don't mean to not give it due diligence, but just as long as we understand that that's an idea of indirect teaching, where you give all this information and then you come to a conclusion at the end. So then discussion, again, always a good thing if you have a purpose and you stay on the task of the discussion, you have the rules of the discussion, and you monitor that discussion with key questions. That is the job of the teacher, okay? You give the purpose, you define the rules along in conjunction with the kids, but then you monitor it with key questions. If they start going off track, you bring them back with key questions. Okay, that's an interesting point. However, what do you think about this? We won't go into reciprocal or the DRTA. Did you do a DRTA with one of your professors here? You may have. Inquiry, discovery, this is where you present the problem or pose the question. Students gather the data and investigate, then they give their findings, and this is what they come up with for their discovery. And again, I'm not going to go over these too much because you have them there, and well, I've said it before. Think, pair, share, though, this does come out. And so you do need to know this, and I think you're probably pretty familiar with think, pair, share, right? Pose a question, think about it, get into small groups to discuss it, and then you give your answers to the whole group lots of times. Cooperative learning, a lot of different things here. The student teams, the games, the jigsaw, those are all part of cooperative learning. Again, I hope I didn't go over it too quickly. You do have it there. You can always look at it. But for teaching ESL or ELLs, you must make those adjustments and accommodations that appropriately address the student's language learning needs. And you do not water it down. Do not water it down at all. If it's a 4th grade student who doesn't speak English well, that doesn't mean we give him 2nd grade work until he's mastered the English. He has to do 4th grade work, right? He must do 4th grade work. Please remember that students who are ELLs have double the work. They have double the work as their peers. Why? If I'm English proficient and I'm in a classroom studying science in English, I don't have to focus on the language. I'm just thinking about the concepts. If I'm not proficient in English, I have to be focusing in on the science concepts, but I have to be focusing in on the language in order to learn it as well. So it's double the work. If we were all to go to Germany right now and try to learn in German this stuff, boy, it's a lot of content, and we're doing it in a language we don't understand. It's double the work, right? So we have to remember that with our ELLs. Build on their cultural and language background. Instructional scaffolding. What is scaffolding again? I know I went over it really quickly earlier today, but hopefully you've learned this in other classes. What's scaffolding? Helping them with temporary supports. Temporary supports. Scaffolding, you should know this. Scaffolding is, or sometimes scaffolding are, temporary supports. kind of like today, really, with underlining the questions, circling the information. Those are temporary. Eventually, you'll just be doing them automatically in your head. We wanted to try it now so that it becomes that. Okay? And I guess the thing is, too, is that ELLs need to participate just as fully as everyone else in the classroom. We know TEKS are the basics for all instruction, and that the ELTs are part of the TEKS. Okay, I know I went over that rather quickly. I hope I didn't do a disservice to it. But all those different techniques, you can look at those. I wouldn't really worry about those so much at this point. Just to know that there's direct, indirect, and cooperative learning for models of instruction. Right? Does that make sense? Competency 8, page 8, 22 through 24. Let's see how we do. Take your time, make sure you're reading the questions appropriately, seeing what the information is that they're asking for or focusing on.
We didn't have this, like when I graduated DC before, this is the PPR was always the part where coming in from education. And then they would take this course, and they organize teachers, they would pass it. But then we were also, they would have student teaching and then doing tests, and these is what student teaching is what
it can, right? It really can, interestingly enough.
Because I took it before I student taught, and then my grade was so close to passing, and then when I went to student, it dropped. And then I got out of the classroom and it went back. So
isn't that wow. Okay, let's look at it. Let's look at it, and we'll see what we have. And when we finish with this part, we'll take our final break of the day, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up the last 4 domains, right? Okay, we ready? Or 5 domains, actually. Okay, Ramis. What is the most strategic advantage of this instructional plan for number 22?
C.
C. Good job. No problem, Sarah? Okay, nicely done. Bravo. 23, first year 9th grade teacher. Ay, pobrecito. Whether his instruction will result in effective learning. What they know about the topic? Any questions they have about the topic? What's the greatest benefit of his requiring his students to write in a learning log? A, B, C, or D?
C.
C is correct again. Wow, good job. C, senor. C, Sabathia. Right, okay. 24. C.C. Ryder, right? Wasn't that C.C. Ryder? Oh, come on, yeah, hello. Okay. Heather, her teacher always returned work the next day. She thinks that it's critical for student learning. What is the most important reason? Okay, now this is the one where sometimes we have a difference of opinion, but I'm going to tell you there is one best answer.
C.
Is it really C again?
Yes.
It is. It's letter C. Did you get that one? Yeah? Oh, good, Mireya. Excellent. Okay. Are there questions about this? Seriously, are there questions about this one? Yes.
23 and 24.
23 and 24. Okay.
C.
Any particular question, or should we just go? Let's go over it.
Okay, 23. Why isn't it? Why is it C?
Why is it C? Okay, so let's look at it, and I know you have it there, but let's read it, okay? A first-year 9th grade teacher is concerned about whether his instruction will result in effective learning. Okay? What is the greatest benefit of his requiring students to write in a learning log their understanding or their restatement of the lesson objective, what they know about the topic to be studied, and any questions they have about the topic? So here's our objective. What do you know about it? What kind of questions? This is almost like a KWL type of thing, right? Do you know what I'm saying when I say KWL? Mm-hmm. Okay. So why is that good? Let's look at A. This approach will ensure that the planned follow-up learning activities will result in students getting the right answers on quizzes. I hope nobody put that one. It's about learning. We do want them to do well on quizzes, but that's not the purpose of doing things. So A is out, right? Let's look at B. Students will be more able to complete their work efficiently. That doesn't sound bad. We want students to do that. C, it will facilitate students' development of a conceptual framework for the topic. Yeah, that doesn't sound bad either. D, this puts all students on an equal status. Probably get rid of that one right away, right? All students equal status. Equity is not the same as equal, right? Equity is giving the same shot. Equal means doing the same thing. So we can probably get rid of A and D. Does that make sense so far? So now it's between B and C, and both of those things, I mean, who does not want them to complete their work more efficiently, and who does not want them to facilitate a development of the framework, conceptual framework? So what are we talking about? What's the greatest benefit of requiring students to write in a learning log their understanding of the lesson objective and what they know about the topic to be studied in any question? What does this give us an idea of? Is this kind of pre or post?
Pre.
It's pre. I think so. If we're asking them, what's your understanding of the objective and what do you think you're going to be learning? What kind of questions do you have? This isn't after the fact. This is before the fact. So when we say students will be able to be more able to complete their work efficiently, I don't know if they're coming up with their ideas ahead of time are going to help them to complete it more efficiently. I think the better answer would be that they're going to be developing their concept of what it's about and then setting their purposes for learning. Does that somewhat explain it?
Yes.
So I think that's for 23. Don't worry, you will get your 10 minutes, I assure you. And probably 11 or 12, right? Yeah. Okay. Now, let's look at Heather. The teacher always return work the next class day. She believes it's crucial. What's the most important reason for Heather to return her 5th grade students' work within 1 or 2 days? Okay? And this is the one where I've seen where some people disagree vehemently, but okay. A, 5th graders need constant encouragement, so returning their work will help them keep up with their grades so they can tell their parents how they are doing.
Who cares about the parents?
Yeah, I know. 5th graders do not go tell their parents how they're doing all the time. As a matter of fact, they don't want to tell their parents. But that's not part of this, whether they do or not, right? And one thing, I could be wrong about this, but one thing I don't like about this is 5th graders need constant encouragement. It's almost like a developmental thing. Kindergartners need constant encouragement. 12th graders need constant encouragement. 10th graders, 5th graders, 4th, 3rd. It's not, it almost makes it sound like 5th grade, at that age, they need, all people need constant encouragement. So I would say A, out. B, continuous grading and returning of papers and products will help Heather when she assigns students time to put their portfolio.
Teacher said.
That's about the teacher having time. That's not why we do things. We said it was C. We'll come back to that one. D. Fast turnaround of papers will help Heather keep grades. Oops.
Help Heather.
It's not about helping Heather. We might like Heather, not as much as we like Randy, of course. But we might like Heather, and we want to help facilitate, but it's not about her, right? So then, look at letter C. Immediate feedback encourages students to continually improve their performance. It's all about improving performance, right? So does that make sense why C is the better answer, or the best answer there?
I got it right.
Okay. Okay, cool. Any other comments or questions? Let's take our final break. When we come back, we'll zip through the rest and we'll be done. And then you guys will be masters at the PPR. Seriously. Isn't that nice? Yeah. Okay. 14:36. It's 2:36. We'll meet back at 2:46. 2:46. It sounds better at 2:45, right? 2:46.
Help my endurance.
I think so.
I think it says I'm hilarious. That's why I put that. Plus, I mean, you know, stuff. Look at that.
There's a Facebook page.
I just realized the video that I'm about to send you, that means like this in the background. Can you see it?
I don't know where I'm at.
Look at this.
You're right behind Josh. You're the only one waving.
You're the only one waving.
Oh, yeah. That's embarrassing.
Oh, wait.
I'm
Look
sending
at
it.
Van Gogh.
I'm sending it to the group chat.
You sent videos, did you? Huh?
With enough.
Good luck.
I guess I've never like had a video on my phone.
That's probably man, I see. That's why I put this one because I just like stop. That was like my way of saying stop.
Do you not like that?
That one is that cheesy. Oh my god. See, that's why I've been putting beans instead. It's like this one. The one I said to when Vane tells me to calm down and stuff, I get crazy.
There's a radiation.
Or this one. See, this one was hilarious. So it says always wear seatbelts. Not me. What's my favorite? No, that.
So you or I've seen it.
Have you ever seen this? Always wears seatbelt.
Yes. I was really worried about having a car.
I'm friends that were like,
But like the one in Florida, it was like,
the expensive one.
Was she wearing like, was she like a
Clown.
oh yeah.
That's like a hassle.
Yes, but you know,
This one that you guys are.
Oh, yeah.
5 minutes left. Like a trench coat.
Depends on
It's a lab coat, it's a white hat.
He's a scientist.
Because my brother wants to be Spider-Man, so I'm making my husband. But I have to make it a little suit.
It's a lab.
I think we should go with the building.
Is that you?
I will not, huh?
That's such a good agreement.
I'm like, because
That just like came in and.
I won't be anything aesthetics.
So you can't be no X-Men. What about leather?
Worse.
The
I
punch.
say if I'm a building and I carry him, he's like creepy on I'm building.
you're gonna carry the trail around for like 3 hours.
You're saying you're gonna dress up as Doc Ock?
No, my husband is.
Oh, how's he gonna get the
Well, I do make him out of
cardboard? See, it's easy. If you want to, you can just do local.
those little,
You get those foam noodles. You get
but not the big
them
ones,
and
the
it's
little ones,
you're done.
and then you cut them and you tape them. I already found like how the only thing I think I would make is a little. Or even to buy them.
You can make it out of cardboard. You can
Or,
make it
but there's something like real loud that has like the glide. That's what I'm like. Last year, we were, my husband's son was an astronaut. Now was the rocket. And the rocket could fit anywhere because I created out of cardboard.
They were based on their selecting their what was he saying?
I don't really want to read that. That was cute.
I know
It was huge.
You know, one of my coworkers, she drew something that's her Halloween. I like
I wanted to do that, but then I was like,
it just didn't, I think she said it took like 15 hours. I think it was like 20 hours.
You know what?
I know that's why. Because I looked at it, because he likes, like,
But it was really good.
I've been asking him. Like, that was last year.
I never asked.
This is me. This is me.
Do you have a visual
Are you looking at costume ideas?
Responsibility.
I already ordered this into my.
Mysterio? Do you have a fish?
Yeah, I actually do. Let me see. Let me see. It's a girl? It's a boy.
Hey, I wonder if this is legit. There's a service called Poop Center.
I don't know, Spider-Man.
That's what I'm enemies together. There's one that it said send your enemies litter. So where
Is there like?
they get a random.
Okay, so then, can I look it up to see like if somebody has it?
Technically, he's Facebook.
So they get it and they open it. Crap.
No, because you know which thing plastic I could use? The real big ones for the cheese puff. But I do have a glass, but mine's a glass. I have a huge glass. I can bring it. Serious.
That's you.
Oh my god, these are so
Are you looking for heroes to dress up?
Okay, so you want to be a hero or do you want to be a villain?
Do they have to be Marvel?
No, my son, it has to match my son. Spider-Man. Yeah.
Oh, so it has to be. Because I was gonna say you could just be Goku and you can be Doctor. What's that?
Because we always do a thing like this last year.
The Lizard Man before he turns. What's his the light side? The villain's name is the Lizard, but I don't know the doctor.
Oh, but he still wears spikes. It's not even a villain.
You can be Dr. Kong. Yeah, you can be Dr. Fire.
Right now.
Oh man.
That one's cool. I like that one.
Yeah.
When the worst part is that our last name is Parker.
Well, then you can be Bones.
Me, Parker.
So again, you know, okay. So yeah.
Or you can switch with your husband.
Oh, okay.
When the movie he was
See, if this is true, I would choose the Tell me what. What would you choose? Why?
No, and then I ordered myself because I didn't want it buff. You know how all
Oh, that patty.
I hate it. And I'm like, I don't want like skinny like a kid. So I ordered the
My name was Randy.
I'm trying to think of Spider-Man. Black Cat?
Before I was able to fit like put whatever I wanted.
Is this like our...
Yeah, but
I really
do I look like I can wear that?
Speaking of anyone pull off the ladder, it's just a matter of how hot it's going to be because I had that fortune telling me, no time with Crystal Ball. And she sent Spider-Man to different dimensions and stuff.
Yeah, no.
This is our first year. He was one.
Why don't you just do what's the name? Adam
Never use it again.
I guess.
Okay, well then let's continue. Look at this taskmaster, I said. He is just right there. Okay, let's move. Come on, Myers, move it. Okay, yes, we're going to move it. We're going into the final part. I know, it's very sad. Oh no, that's not what you're saying. Okay, competency 9, technology. Now let's look at technology. What we have here is up to date, unless something happens today. The thing with technology is that it's obsolete very quickly, right?
30 minutes.
But the competency regarding technology should be pretty good. So, ensure equity and access to technology. What does that mean? You cannot have computers for the GT class and not for the ELLs. I mean, we have to ensure equity in access. All kids must have the same amount of access. Now, if they have something from home, that's different. But what does this mean? And this is becoming more of a major point. There's a huge debate whether we should allow students to bring their own devices to school. And for a while, a lot of schools prohibited it. Now we've kind of learned to live with it, and they use it in class. We cannot demand that a student use technology if the student does not have access to it. I know that sounds like a no-brainer, but if you have 25 kids in your class and 23 of them have iPhones or Samsung phones or whatever, and you say, okay, look up this, and 2 kids don't, you cannot make that a requirement for a grade, especially in the classroom. Does that make sense? So you got to be careful. If it is for a grade or something like this, you must have equity of access for all students. Certainly it can be used to increase motivation. This is where we're going into more and more. It's not about accessing information, it's about evaluating the information that is accessed. It's not about accessing information anymore. I remember when these things first came out, and they were saying, okay, now click here, and then click up on top and type in Google, and then you got to put a dot there, and then com, C-O-M. And it was like, Google, wow, Google. I mean, it's not about how we access anymore, it's about evaluating the sources of information. Which, boy, with the whole thing that happened in 2016 with the Russian hacking and all this and things happening on Facebook about is it real or not, this is especially crucial. Demonstrate child safety software to reduce parent consent or concern for internal use. We're going to see that they can't be exposed to salacious material, but things have been happening in the world of technology where kids are able to break through barriers and access it. So now we have students sign off saying, I will not access this stuff, to kind of not make the school responsible. And if they do, they're knowingly breaking a rule. It's not as though we're allowing access. There are a lot of filters in our schools, but kids are very good at hacking through it. But still, when you have software, and people are becoming so accustomed to this, but it's still a good idea. When you have new software that students will be using in school, it's always a good idea to have parents come and see it, especially since now they're web-based and not hardware or software-based. Okay? This you need to know. This still comes out on the test, I will tell you this. With a single copy of a program, you may make one backup copy and install one copy onto your computer. You cannot share it with all your other colleagues. You may make a backup copy and you can install one onto your computer. Okay? Again, a lot of things are web-based now, but there are still things that we buy on disk and on other ways. So, yeah, bless you. You may not make multiple copies, make copies to be sold, or put a single copy of a program onto a network without a site license. And I will say, and again, I don't mean to take too much time on this, and you all probably won't do it on your own, but I will say there are becoming a lot of issues about this because school districts and individual teachers are writing their own curriculum. And they're pulling resources from all over the place. And so they're saying, hey man, I know this great thing that I got off of teacher.com or whatever to use for this particular thing. Let's put it there. And they put it up onto their curriculum or onto their website for their curriculum, and people are using it. That's a huge no-no. You've got to get permission. I know it seems like a minor thing, but you have to be very careful. Am I making sense with what I say? And so you don't want to get caught in that. You know, it seems so easy. Man, I found this great thing off of this one site in this book, and so here, I'm going to let you guys have it, and all of a sudden it's all around. You can get in trouble for that.
What about performance rights?
Performance?
Rights.
Rates?
Rights.
Oh, performance rights? Like an artistic performance?
Yeah, like watching movies for like the whole school. How does the school address that, or is it specific per districts?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. If you're using something, and I will say it, there might be something on here. I know those laws have been changing over the last few years. They got very strict, and now they've become a little more liberal again about that. If you're using something for an educational purpose for your classroom, you can do it. If it's for, let's say, entertainment for the school, you got to pay for it. Does that make sense? So you do it on a small basis for educational purposes. You have a right to show a movie that you've purchased or that you're renting. But if you're saying, okay, all kids who have 100 points for AR, you get to come in and into the gym, and we're going to show this movie for 200 kids, 300 kids. And that's for entertainment purposes, for reward purposes. You have to purchase that and maybe notify them. I'm not too sure about that. I hope I'm answering your question. But the big thing is, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, and I'll let you speak, but I think the thing is, if there's a question that arises, you know the person to speak to on your campus is? Librarian. The librarians are the ones they're not really librarians anymore. They're librarian and media technologists or something like that. And so they're the ones who are always up to date, or they should be up to date on the rules. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think it's like the school can't make money off of the movie that they're showing. Like that's how they can show a movie, because our school does that, where we take a popular movie and we have like parents night, movie night for the kids, so they can come in and watch, but they can't pay anything, or they can't.
Yeah, I know that there's an educational aspect, but I know that it's also very different with like I think you have to be a teacher in a class. Like you have to have a class, but you cannot profit off of it.
No.
So, and I don't know,
Right.
like he said, I don't know if you can view it entertainmentally even if you're in school with an entertainment purpose.
Well, this would be different too because you're talking about after hours and with parents involved, and if it's a fundraiser, then that's a different thing
No,
too.
it's not a fundraiser. This is just
Okay.
like an aspect of trying to get parents into this. Like
Okay.
connection.
Yeah, you know, and again, it's interesting because like books, you've probably seen, I know I used to take advantage of this all the time, get free books online. Why? Because they're old enough, they've gone past the patented use and all that. And the same thing with movies. If you get a movie, I don't know, maybe it's the same thing, I don't know, that's past a certain date, you don't have to pay anymore. If it's the latest one that you get at the Bridge in Progreso for, you know, $5, you get Blade Runner 2049 for $2 at the Bridge, you know, that'd be different as well. So,
Someone already has it.
right? Yeah, right, yes.
I'm kind of a little bit familiar with this area because I was stuck with the librarian duties since we lost our librarian. So I'm beginning to learn this material. There are videos that are like I work for the Brownsville Independent School District. Brownsville Independent School District has videos that are already filtered that are educational or
And they were purchased.
Yes.
Right.
It's a district that you can use, so but the librarian is the one that has the password that teachers can use to access these videos. Now, as regards to, I'm becoming familiarized as to showing movies. There has to be every camp. I don't know if it depends on the district. Some campuses buy. That's what I need to figure out. But some campuses buy a site license where they can show videos as incentives and things like that. But sometimes the district purchases for the whole campus. That's where I'm stuck at. That, but
Well,
I'm coming from. But you have to figure out the librarian would be the best choice.
You're
for
right,
that.
and I think you use two words there that are key: buy and purchase. They're synonyms, right? If it's been bought, if it's been purchased, there should not be a problem. If your school or district has purchased it, then that was for that purpose. It's really when you kind of maybe go get a book or go get a movie, you bring it in to show to the kids. You know, if it's in your classroom for educational purposes, there shouldn't be a problem, but, you know, it depends again. So anything that's been purchased, either if it's the actual cassette type of thing that you put into a VCR, or if it's on the web that you just download onto the computer, if it's been purchased, there should not be a problem because that is the purpose of those.
Can they use
And you get these
YouTube
site
videos?
licenses. I'm sorry.
YouTube videos?
YouTube? Like Bono and Edge? Oh, YouTube. Yeah. YouTube. Yeah, again, you know, that's the thing. Things are moving at such a fast pace.
Like
YouTube is generally free and open to the public. So you can use it in the classroom. And I've seen it used very effectively. But again, you better be careful what you're showing. And you better be careful that the ad before it comes up is either filtered out or, you know, that it's not something that's going to offend. But yeah, no, I mean, I've given presentations where I access YouTube stuff that's free and open to the public. Now, again, going back to what you mentioned, if you start charging people for that, then you're violating a lot of things, besides your own ethics, maybe, your own moral code. So, yeah, no multiple copies. You can't be making money off of it at all. Fair use laws. Now, this is kind of what you're getting into, and this is the thing. It allows teachers to use these different mediums or media in instruction without having to ask permission, as long as it is for educational purposes. Right? So, I mean, again, can we use videos? Well, what's the good educational response? No, well, I mean, that sounds like a good educational response, but what's the good educational response?
As long as it's education.
It depends. It depends, right? Didn't we go over this before?
Yes.
Boy, how quickly we forgot. No, I'm kidding. This is the name of the moment, right? Okay, so no, it does depend though. as it says here, if you are using it for educational purposes, you're fine.
Teacher too.
Right? You're fine. Appropriate use means that when given access to the internet, an individual will not use it to view salacious images or content. And again, this is just moving at such rapid pace, and kids, I mean, my grandson Isaac, he is 6 years old. That kid, he knows his way around a computer. He can hack into things already. You know, and I'm asking him, how do I access this? Hey, Poppy, it's like easy, do this and this and this. You know, he could hack through anything at school. So now they're putting the burden on the student and the parents. Because of all these filters that schools put in, kids are still hacking through them. I don't think Isaac would do that. I hope he wouldn't. But, you know, he's not a unique individual. A lot of kids can. So now we're making them sign off saying that they will not do that. So that's about it for competency 9. The technology. We ready to, or should I go back? These terms, appropriate use, fair use, and copyright law. You know, copyright means you can't make copies and you can't make money off of it, right? It's copyrighted. It belongs to somebody. The only copies you can make are for a backup, right? For a backup. Fair use means you can use it if you're being fair about it. Just don't abuse it. Don't be making money off of it. It's a good educational resource. Use it. And then the last one is the appropriate use, meaning you're not going to be looking at bad stuff on the web. Okay? Does that clarify? Okay, let's take the test. No, let's do an evaluation. That sounds better, right? Okay. Competency 9, technology, page 9, 25, 26, and 27. Okay, you ready? Are ya? Let's do it. I'll have a feel for when you're done. Obviously, you must be Myers. Jeez, don't ask me that question.
I was like,
Are we just about done? Just about ready, I should say? Yeah? How do you feel about this one? Which one really looks like what?
Yeah, the best.
C, I mean C.
A, S, D, and D.
Okay, let's see what we have. Number 25, Heather, there she is again. The teachers are concerned that 5th grade students might be more worried about how the technology product looks than about the content included. Okay, so how can they best address this concern about loss of content knowledge and guide students as they begin their technology work? What do you think, A, B, C, or D for number 25?
C.
Oh, it's just all there, isn't it? Letter C. With the students' help. Oh, isn't that nice? That is the ideal world. But it can be done, right? With their help, design a rubric that will serve as a guide. Oh, I mean, all the key terms are right there. Okay? Good. And, for the project, and that identifies important content as well as elements of technology design. Oh my gosh, yes. Absolutely. C is the best answer. Okay, now, if you got that one, hopefully that helped guide you to number 26 as well. A, B, C, or D for 26?
C.
See, look at that again. Oh, I love this. In partnership. Not even just with their help, but in partnership with students. Design a rubric that will define both important. It's all there, right? Okay, now number 27 could cause some problems. I didn't come around to see what you had for this. But what's key here, do you think? Second grade. Yes, second grade. So again, we may not be familiar with second grade TEKS, but what do you think his focus should be for second graders? A, B, C, or D?
B.
B as in boy. B as in boy. Right? B. That's B. I thought it was A, B, C, D. Okay. Yeah, it's B. So let's look at this, okay? Because this is the one that may seem a little outdated, but it is not. It is still the way it is for TEKS for second grade. So A, to apply as much advanced technology knowledge as possible? No. That would be later on, probably, right? C, to ensure that students produce attractive computer products. That's kind of nice, but that kind of goes back to previously, number 25, where students were too concerned about what it looked like rather than the essence of it, right? D, to teach specific computer skills on a regular basis. Did some of you have D?
I had D.
Yeah, I can see that, but
it's because you had just threw me off when you were talking about your grandson. You
I threw you off. Go ahead. No, you're right. I
He's
did.
6 years old.
Okay.
And he's doing all this stuff.
Right.
So by the time
Right.
you get second, you expect him to know what a computer
well,
is.
because you're supposed to
Okay.
integrate tech.
teaching, I mean, it says right there.
But
I know I did.
That's why I got
I know, and I understand that, and I didn't mean to do that intentionally. It is, and if that's your only one wrong, mark it right. And say, Myers got it wrong, not Randy, right?
I would think this is.
But this is the thing. It's age appropriate, it's grade appropriate, and yes, while kids are able to hack into things, Still, we need to know that kids know how the computer works
But don't they do
and what it does.
Don't they do AR in kinder? They're in a computer, so wouldn't they know already?
It's point and click though.
First
Right.
graders.
I think that's the thing.
First graders are doing AR.
Yeah, they are.
AR is the same from pre-K through 12th grade. There's a question that appears on the screen, you click A, B, C, or D, and then you click for the next question.
But they got to get into it, so they already should know the.
Well, yeah,
But again, one thing is
we teach them procedure.
knowing how to work a program, and another thing is explore the way a computer may be used and the things it can do. Those are different things than completing an ABC type of assessment on a computer. You still don't like it.
I could.
Did you have A on there? Or what did you have, Randy?
I had answered D.
I had D.
I had D too.
I guess it's the best choice, you know.
I could.
Because it says regular basis, okay? But I still don't agree with it.
Yeah.
When I was reading
Well, let me just say, and maybe I'm not being very good at explaining this one, but I'll tell you, what are computer skills? I will tell you that I talked with a principal at a secondary school who talks with a lot of people about this, and she wants us to teach keyboarding at the elementaries again. Because kids are coming up to the junior high school, and they're doing that. They're just thumbing or pointing and touching, but they're not typing, right? So I guess I look at this, teach specific computer skills. That's not keyboarding though, is it?
It's just
or is that keyboarding or?
It's definitely a skill.
I would say
Yeah.
I would imagine it might be.
Well, the thing is,
So
I
with
remember
second
in
graders,
first
was
grade-
that good for keyboarding?
In first
I don't
grade,
know.
we
I
were
would
doing
assume like the specific one would be
That was in
maybe
the
like
80s.
Microsoft Word or something. So that
Yeah.
But it says computer skills, it doesn't say computer applications.
You're right. You're right.
So, I mean,
So what are computer skills then?
Just the general use?
So what's the difference between B and D then?
Well, it's because B
You're
can be
focusing on
interpreted
using
as
skills,
very
it's
basic
just
or very
It's how
advanced.
you
You're exploring all these different things.
Then there's no reason to teach this.
Yeah.
exactly, that's why I chose.
Huh.
So it's not gonna be.
I think.
It can't be on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think this is the
The other way
thing.
would be exploring. You're
And we may not like this, and I understand that. But I think the difference between explore and teach, if you have the opportunity to choose between the two, and the rest of the answer looks somewhat similar, explore computer, teach computer, I would go with explore with the little kids. I know I'm killing you, Randy. I'm sorry. This is the only one wrong. I tell you what, I'm still giving you an A for the day, man. Okay? Yes.
Is David a computer teacher, or is he?
That's a good question. I don't know. It doesn't say, but it says he's going to focus the learning of computers. It doesn't say if he's the lab manager or the.
Because then, if he was a computer teacher, I would select D, because you would.
Well, it says
Yes.
I think he is because they should have all grade
Efficiencies, no, I mean, come on.
Okay. How do you feel about this? Let me ask you, how shall we evaluate this? I'm going to, in partnership with you, we're going to design an answer that will satisfy all of us. What do you think?
I feel offended.
Okay, you're right. Okay.
None of the above.
It's letter E. The answer is No, I understand. I understand. I will say this is what has been said is the better answer. I thought I understood it. Maybe things are changing now, though. I think the best thing is for little kids.
Specific test.
You know, you do want to teach, but how do they learn? I think if we think of indirect and direct, exploring on something like a computer is better. You know, teaching math, exploring math concepts, teaching math concepts to a second grader. Explore math concepts sounds pretty good at this point.
But doesn't exploring not entail learning? Like,
No,
always?
no, I would say you cannot say that there's no correlation. I would say, you know, I don't know. Maybe we'd have to look at how many TEKs there are for computer technology in second grade to think how much time we have to explore and how much time we have to learn the rules. I think it's more about, or the skills, I should say. I'm thinking that exploring how to use it and what it can do is very powerful. Just like we were saying a little bit earlier, it's not so much on accessing anymore, it's about evaluating the access. I think it's about exploring what a computer will do. I don't know, I probably can't explain it any better than that, which is garbage anyway, what I've explained probably. But I will say that the better answer between B and D is B at this point, but I can see why I threw you off.
I think because I feel like it's more, this answer goes more for like 10 years ago when they weren't teaching technology as much.
Yeah, possibly. I think it goes even, I don't agree with that in a way though, because it used to be, we were teaching the skills, okay? This is how you turn it on, this is how you access, this is the keyboard, this is how you type in, and now it really is more about how do we explore these things? What is the computer really capable of doing? So in a way it might seem like this is outdated, but I think it's even a little more updated than some other things about it. And I could be way off. Again, out of the 30 people, well, she left, and so now out of the 29 people here, I'm probably the least technology-wise, okay? I'm definitely a technology immigrant, right? Is that what it's called? Technology immigrant. I'm not a native. So you probably understand this stuff better than I, and I don't think I can make a better case for what I've tried to do. I'm very sorry. I think you could probably argue with the Texas, see how far that will get you. I don't know. It'd be nice if we could, but and I'm not saying that to shut down the discussion. I don't think I can enlighten any further, and you can feel very strongly about your response, but the answer is B. Okay, here we go. Competency 10, assessment. What's the difference between assessment and test?
A test is a form of assessment.
Test is a form of assessment, that's right. You're absolutely right. And generally a test will tell you how much they know and don't know to give a final grade or to give a grade. But assessment is broader than that, right? And so in assessment, it's to find out what they know or don't know in order for what?
Progress.
In order to drive the instruction, right? It's not just a test where you get a grade. We assess to find out what it is we need to do. So assessment and tests can be somewhat the same, but classroom assessment should be learner-centered, and tests must be aligned to the learning objectives, right? You should not be testing something that you haven't been providing. We saw this a little bit earlier. Feedback should occur immediately after testing. Good or bad, feedback needs to be there. Kids need to know. If you wait a week to give feedback on an assessment, they will have forgotten by then. Grading based on improvement is likely to increase motivation. What does that mean? Grading based on improvement is likely to increase motivation.
Getting better grades makes you want to improve.
You know, bless you. Some of those kids, they start off the year at about 20%, you know, competency level. It's not about getting to the 75% or 80. It may be getting to that 45% for this year, then the following year another 30% increase or so. So not that we're setting our expectations low, but if we say, hey man, if you improve by 5 points, then you'll get extra by doing this. Because some kids will not get there. Okay, so assessment is this collection of information about what students know, and then this drives our instruction, whereas evaluation or test is measuring or grading student performance, right? As was just discussed. Informal assessments. Don't need to go over all of these, but I will say that we'll look at standardized assessments as well. But informal assessments, even though these look subjective, and they are somewhat subjective, these have just as high status as standardized tests, or they can if they're effective. Does that make sense? So do not belittle teacher observation. That is a form of informal assessment that's very valid in education. Any questions about what any of these mean? Please ask. Look it over and ask.
Informal inventory?
Which one?
Informal inventory?
Informal inventories, yes. Informal inventories is things like, what do you think a 4th grade student at this point in social studies should know? So it's not just necessarily about giving them a test, but asking them more in detail so that maybe it's not an A, B, C, D thing, but does this child have a somewhat good grasp on what the Declaration of Independence is, for example, or what the Bill of Rights are? Does he have somewhat of an understanding? And that can be formal, standardized testing, but having a conversation with the student to say, does he know this? Does he kind of know this? Does he have a feel for this? That would be an informal inventory. Does that make sense? Okay. So formal assessments are diagnostic, standardized, and performance tests or assessments. What are diagnostic tests? What does a diagnostic test purport to do?
To find out what level they're
to find out where somebody is at. Whenever we go in to see the doctor and they say the diagnosis is this, they ran diagnostic tests to see where you're at. Standardized tests, what does standardized mean?
One
General,
test for all.
It means it's the same conditions for all students. Same conditions. You might want to write that down. Standardized, we tend to think that standardized means that they're reliable, but that's not necessarily true. It just means that we're giving the same conditions for all students. So like the Texas PPR that you'll be taking, is that a standardized test? We're hoping it's reliable. We're hoping it doesn't have questions like the last one that we had, so that there's debate, that there are clear-cut right answers. But at least it's standardized in that everybody gets 5 hours. There are 90 questions. That's it. You can, you're all taking it on the computer. That's it. There's not, okay, well, you get 2 hours, you get 5 hours, you get 7 hours, you get, okay, for you, there's 120 questions for you, there are 45. That would be unstandardized. So standardized, again, don't just assume that it means it's reliable, but it does, we're hoping they're reliable, but basically standardized just means that it's the same conditions for all takers. Performance assessment, observation, constructed response, or essay, oral, or projects. In other words, performance assessment gets into, even though it's formal, it's a little more subjective, right? This standardized test that you'll be taking, the Texas PPR, there's no subjectivity involved. You're going to put it on the computer. A computer without a brain is going to go through it, and it's going to mark what's right, what's incorrect, and then give you the answer about what your score is. With performance assessment, it's formal. There are criteria, but there could be some variation there. Just like when a band performs and you have 5 judges there, You know, one judge is going to say that was a 10, one judge is going to say that was a 7, one judge is going to say 8. They're working from the same criteria, so there's some subjectivity there, but that's it for assessment. Pretty quick, huh? Comments, questions, concerns about assessment? Yes. What?
Can you go back to the previous slide real quick? Thank you.
So yeah, for performance assessment, again, it's not difficult, but sometimes we just get a little confused. We tend to think, you hear standardized test, ooh, that's a good test. It's a really good assessment. Standardized doesn't mean it's a good one. It just means that everybody's getting the same treatment. Sometimes we think of performance-based or performance assessment as very subjective. Well, it is subjective. There are guidelines, but it is considered a formal assessment because you have those same guidelines throughout. An informal inventory is kind of something you come up with and you're measuring it, and it may be different for different kids. This is the same across, but there's some subjectivity involved. Does that make sense? Okay, let's look at competency 10, assessment, page 10, 28 through 30. Oh my gosh. We're going to have maybe about 4 minutes for this one. What do you think? No, we might need a little bit more.
That sounds pretty long.
5? Huh?
That sounds pretty long. 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay. 5 minutes. We'll go 5. But we still have 3 more to go, and we only have a half hour. So, yes, we're okay? Wow, that was silent. It looked like it was going to be huge. Okay. Wow. Well, bless you regardless. Bless you all the same. Okay, competency 10 assessment, go for it. 28, 29, 30.
I was just thinking of it.
You got it? Shall we go over them? Hopefully there's not a lot of dissent on this one. We'll see. But if there is, that's good. I like the conversation. Okay, here we go. Competency 10, assessment number 28. What do you think? C. Letter C. Very good. Any problems with that one?
Nope.
Oh, hallelujah. Number 29. Here we go. A. Wow, that was quick. Yes, the assessment should focus on the defined learning goals. Very good. Okay. Number 30.
C.
Letter D. How did we do? Letter D. Are we cool with that one?
Yep.
Any comments or questions? Seriously, please feel free. I won't shut you down. No, we're cool with that one?
We're good.
Yeah? All right. Well, then let's go to competency 11, family involvement. Here we go. I just want to make one comment for this first one. We'll talk about all three in a moment. But number one, communicate expectations and goals during an open house at the beginning of the year. This is something that I'm glad schools have gone to. When I first started teaching, it was usually like the second, third, even fourth week of school when there was an open house. And what did the parents want to know? ¿Cómo va mi hijo? You know, and it was tough to talk to the individual parents. It wasn't a conference, it was an open house. And so when you do it right before school starts, they don't ask that question because they don't know. And this gives you an opportunity to talk to them about what your goals are for the year, what kind of materials you'll be using, what the expectations are, and this is very, very powerful for that. This is another thing. Please make a note of this. This does come out on the test, but just on a personal level, always try to begin your conferences with parents when they're talking about their individual children on a positive note, beginning and ending with a positive note. You don't want to have the parent come in and say, well, let me tell you about this brat of a child that you bring to school every day. No, you try to be very positive. Wow, he does come to school every day. You know, you don't like what he does in school, but hey, he comes to school every day. You find something positive to talk about that child. Always, and I think this is just a personal observation, but I see it in the research as well, that we've gotten much, much better inviting parents to participate in these conferences. It used to always be, and I still see letters going home, do this with your child, do this with your child, do this with your child. It needs to be a two-way street. What is it that we need to do for your child? What do you think, Miss So-and-so as well? So always get their input. Contact with parents should be ongoing, systematic, and positive. Again, I may have mentioned this before. If that first week of school you contact the parent and you say, I have Matthew in my class this year, and you know Matthew is a tough little kid. You say, I'm really looking forward to having Matthew in my class. We're going to have a wonderful year. I just wanted to let you know. And then the second week you call that parent again. Matthew is a little bit misbehaving, but I just want to let you know we had a great week. We're working on a few things, but I'm loving it that Matthew's in my class this year. Then that third week when Matthew is really getting to be a handful, I need to talk to you about Matthew. All of a sudden the parents are going to say, well, boy, he's been so positive the first couple times. There's now an issue. Let me see what I can do. So again, if you keep it positive, then you're going to have parents working with you more than not. For behavior problems, focus on and offer suggestions for improvement. Don't just say, he's always hitting another girl. He's always hitting a girl in class. He's always taking his pencil and hitting a girl. Don't just do it. You know what? Let's see. What can we do? I think one thing we could do is during that transition time, I'm going to have him work with a buddy so he's not close to the girl. At least come up with a suggestion of how to resolve it. Always collaboratively. We talked about resolving them collaboratively with the children, also with the parents. It's wonderful nowadays. There are various forms of communication. I know my daughter communicates via text with her kids' teachers every day. Every day. All three of her kids. She gets texts and she sends texts with the teachers. You know, there's certainly letters home, things online, etc. Phone calls as well, but a lot of different ways. This is important. Send notes home in the parent's native language. And when I say this is important, let me just note that you're probably all excellent in your Spanish. However, please have someone read your notes home in English and in Spanish to offer suggestions. Making sure that accents are in the right place, making sure that capital letters are in the right place, making sure that words are spelled correctly. You always want to do that. Always go to the school counselor if it's a serious problem. Yes?
How do you deal with a parent that you try to keep it positive? I witnessed this, that's why. You try to keep it positive by, you know, what you're saying, you know, try to begin positive and positive note. But when the parent just totally out says, do not come to me because I did not finish school, I worked 2 jobs, and from this time to this time, he's your student, from this time to this time, he's mine.
Oh, that happens. You know, and it's interesting because some will say, se lo encargo maestro, and they mean it, you know, in a very wonderful way. You're the professional, you do it. And others are like, hey, he's not my problem. And you're going to get a lot of various types. You're following through with your responsibility as a teacher to inform the parent, to request that parent's help. Absolutely, I will be responsible for your child here. He's your child. I'm sure that you're very interested in his well-being. And if we can work together, then we'll hopefully resolve the issue. I will do my job here. I'm hoping that we can work together. I mean, you know, there are some parents who don't want to have anything to do with it. It's just a blessing that they showed up in the first place to the conference, right? So if they're there, that's a win, first of all. But you are going to have to say, you know, yes, you don't want to get angry with the parent. You don't want to lose your cool, and you don't want to say, yes, su hijo, híjole. You don't want to be doing that at all. You do want to be saying, you know, yes, and that's why we're here. There are some concerns. Well, he's here at school. I realize that you're busy providing a home for your child, but we need to work together in this. I'm very concerned about David's well-being, and I'm sure you are as well. So what can we do? Can you give me suggestions about what I can do while he's here with me? Absolutely. And again, it can't be one where you're telling the parent, this is what you do this, don't be working so much, you're going to have to be home when he gets home, do this, do this, do this. No, we tend to tell parents too much sometimes too. But if they say it's not my responsibility, then you've done your best. But you have to try to include them in on it. And you'd be derelict in your duty if you don't inform them. Right? Does that answer your question somewhat? Okay. Okay, let's look at competency 11, the family. Okay, let's see. We've been doing it pretty well in about 5 minutes, and it's 3:35. I think we might have time to give you 5 minutes right now to do it. Ready? Go.
Because she already took the test. Yeah, I understand.
Think we're gonna do it?
You just, I mean, yeah, lazy. Did you read past it?
bumper sticker on your car that says I'd rather be fly fishing?
No, I haven't got one yet.
Are we ready? Or not quite yet? Maybe one more minute. For 33? This is one that does cause some. Look at what it says. Fourth grade teacher.
I just saw that.
Recently administered fourth grade test. So it's recently administered, maybe they administered the state assessment. It should be the start of the test. It's the end of the year, so then that doesn't apply to something, right? You're at the end of the year. Okay, let's see what we have, okay? And I know 33 could cause some issues, but we'll talk about those. And you do have to make an assumption with number 33, I think. Number 31, how can Bonita ensure that when she invites the parents in for a conference, the discussion will be productive and will result in a positive outcome for the student? Well, it says the parent is stating the homework is excessive and unrelated to what 12th grade students need to know. Oh my gosh, the parent is called to complain about this. So how can she ensure that when she invites parents in, the discussion will be productive and will result in a positive outcome? A, B, C, or D?
C.
Letter C. Letter C is correct. Okay? You want to be careful. You know, letter D, explain to the parent that homework is more than what other teachers require. Oh boy, once you start comparing yourself to other teachers, you want to be very careful. It's possible that you say, you know, generally I do this, but that's not a justification. If somebody has an issue with that, then you may need to modify it. So carefully listen to the parent, always listen to the parent, always listen to the parent, and explain why and how the homework is important. And again, maybe you might discover, uh-oh, I can modify mine too, but this is how she can ensure that the discussion will be productive, right? What about 32? Martha, an 8th grade English teacher, wants to encourage the parents to be partners. What would be an effective strategy for her to use when? At the beginning of the school year. A, B, C, or D?
B.
Letter B. Very good. Inform parents of her expectations. That's it, right? That's at the beginning of the year. We don't know about the students yet or anything else. To review textbooks to see how, no, that's not as effective. That might not be a bad thing. Send home a letter, you know, describes developmental characteristics. No, it's not bad to send home letters, but I mean, if you're going to inform them of what the success is, better, much better. Okay, now number 33. Before we answer the question, maybe I need to clarify a couple of things.
C.
No. 33. It says, as a beginning 4th grade teacher. Does this say that it's the beginning of the year?
No.
No, it says it's the beginning 4th grade teacher. Carolyn is preparing to meet with Jamie's parents to discuss her performance on the recently administered 4th grade, I probably should say STAR or other type of state assessment. But when is STAR or when is TAX administered? April. That's right. Even sometimes as late as May, right? So even though she's a beginning 4th grade teacher, is this at the beginning of the year?
No.
When is this? At the end of the year. Okay? Maybe that makes a difference, maybe not. I think it does. Which of the following should be Carolyn's primary emphasis during the meeting? Primary emphasis. Again, maybe all of these things will be good, but which one should be the primary emphasis? Okay? So, what do you think? A, B, C, or D? It's not C. It is A. The best answer is A. Now let's go over this one. Let's go over this one. And again, this is a learning experience. This is a learning experience, right? So let's look at B. Let's look at B first. Hold on. To help Jamie's parents understand key principles of standardized assessment and how those principles might have impacted Jamie's performance. That's not a bad thing.
But it's already late in the year.
It's too, yeah, but you know, come on. This is something you do at the beginning of the year. Hey, this is what a standardized test is, and this is what needs to be done, so let's see what we can do to help Jamie. And still, even after the fact, it's not a bad thing, but it says primary emphasis. Would that be the primary emphasis? To say, this is where your child did wrong. No, that's not the primary emphasis. Okay? Let's look at C. To describe Jamie's academic strengths and needs as indicated by the assessment results. Wow, that sounds pretty good. I like that. And tell the parents how the teacher will address areas that need improvement.
It's too late.
Too late, and you're not that child's teacher next year. Nope. Don't be telling them what next year's teacher will be doing. Yeah, well, if there is purgatory, and it could be purgatory again, you're right. No, but generally speaking, students will not have the same teacher 2 years in a row, generally speaking. And so, again, that's why I say I think it's important for us. That sounds good. It really does. But not at the end of the year after they've taken the test talking about another teacher for next year. Yes?
Isn't there a second, the remedial test within the school year? And then the third one is done during the summer?
When? Fifth grade, fifth grade, and 8th grade only. 5th grade, please note this, 5th grade and 8th grade. 3rd grade, 4th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, no. There's one shot. High school, there is, but that is ongoing. You keep taking that test until you pass it in high school. So what they have at 5th grade and at 8th grade, only in reading and math, you have a second opportunity to pass it. As a matter of fact, you have a third opportunity as well. So you'll take it in April. You'll get the results back. If you passed, hallelujah. If you did not pass, you take it again in May. And then you'll get the results back. And if you didn't pass it, you'll take it one more time in June.
So according to the PPR, that teacher could not assist with the child's development on the areas that
absolutely. The teacher can help at all times.
But not for the test, not for the remedial test.
I'm sorry?
But not for the following remedial test.
This is 4th grade. There is none. This is 4th grade. There's no makeup test for 4th grade.
But there's time between the test and the summer. There's quite a bit of time.
Let me say this, and hopefully I'm saying this appropriately for us to understand. Kids take the state assessment, right? In 3rd grade, they take math and reading. They take it in May. maybe April. If they don't pass, what happens?
They go to the next year.
They go to 4th grade, or they don't, but they don't retake that test. They don't retake it in 3rd grade. 4th grade, what tests do they have? Reading, math, and writing. In 4th grade.
They don't have science?
No. What if they don't pass those tests in 4th grade? What happens? They either get promoted to 5th grade or they don't, but they do not retake that test. Okay. Now, 5th grade, what tests do they take? Science, math, and reading. What if they don't pass the science test? Doesn't matter. There's no retake of the science. Only reading and math in 5th grade and in 8th grade do they get an opportunity 3 times, really, to pass that test. 4th grade, no. 6th grade, no. 7th grade, no. 3rd grade, no.
So
they don't. And 5th grade science, no. 8th grade social studies and science, no. Just reading and math. And they get 3 opportunities. If they fail it the first time, they get a second shot. If they fail it the second time, they get a 3rd shot. High school, they call them EOC, end of course tests. Those, you have to keep taking it until you pass. There are some kids who have taken English 1 test 6 times, 7 times. They have to keep taking those until they pass. So is that somewhat clear? Not that I'm expecting you to remember all that, but yeah, only 5th and 8th grades reading and math are retaken within that same school year.
Okay, so 2 things. So in 8th grade, if they don't pass their reading after the 3 attempts, they get held back, or they still get?
Possibly. It always goes back to the campus. There's a committee that will determine whether they should move on or not.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, I have...
The original intent was that if they don't pass it after the 3rd shot, they're being held back. But they were starting to get a lot of kids in the state of Texas who were not moving on to 6th grade from 5th. They were getting a lot of kids who were not moving on to high school from 8th. Then they were dropping out, and et cetera. So they said, well, the idea is that they are not ready for the next grade level. However, if you determine that they are, they will go.
Okay, and then my next thing is, so we said C was wrong because it's too late to address the areas that need improvement.
It's not too late. I shouldn't say that. But for that year, yes, but it says how the teacher will address areas that need improvement. We're at the end of the year. That teacher, if I'm the 4th grade teacher, or let's say,
you're not going to teach everything in a month.
Let's say Mr. Gonzalez is a 4th grade teacher. Mr. Gonzalez better not say, well, next year Mr. Myers will be doing this, and Mr. Myers will be doing this to address the needs. That's not his place to talk about what I'll be doing as a teacher.
So then how is that different from A, where it says ways to work together? If they're only going to have each other for, it's too late, there's only a month left. So why are they going to work together some more if they're not going to cross over to 5th grade?
Well, I think first of all, there are a couple of things. Number one, it doesn't just say that, to work together. It says to show and discuss the report, right? That's crucial. To ask about their analysis of the report, I think that's crucial. And then, are there ways to work together for the last couple weeks? Yes, I still think there's time. But that's not the only part. The thing about C is that nobody better be telling a parent about how I'm going to address the needs next year for that child. This, again, I think the big thing we have to understand here is that this is at the end of the year. Do we say, well, it's too late, I'm not going to work with you? No, we can still work with you, but don't be talking about next year's teacher. You're still not convinced.
I'm really not.
Okay, I tell you what, we'll stay after and we'll talk about it. Because I think the thing is here that exactly this. It's going to be another teacher, and we do not, as teachers, have the right to tell them, well, that teacher will be doing this, that teacher will be doing that. No.
This doesn't necessarily mean that we're talking about the next year's teacher.
Well, I think so. How the teacher will address the areas that need improvement. I mean, possibly we could say for the last couple of weeks, I'm going to make it all better. I don't think so. I mean, okay. I see a difference, and I think part of it is we have to understand this is end of the year. This is end of the year, and at this point, what are we doing? We're talking about the results of the test. So we can throw in there for these last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, how are we going to work together to help Jamie to transition to the next grade level? We can certainly do that, but it's really about going over the results of the test, right? That's the primary emphasis. We're not going to say, you know what, we should have done this, and you know what, we're going to do this now within the last 2 weeks of the school to make it all better. We can't do that at this point. We can work together to figure out what is in Jamie's best interest, but to address the weaknesses on the test, no. And if that's not clear, I need to think of a different way to say it, and we're really under the gun to continue, sorry. Okay, and I'll stay late to talk about these things, but we do have a couple more to go, and I know we're almost done with time. Okay, professionalism, we're here. You have this, you'll be able to look at it, but basically, professionalism means to work with your colleagues and the community to do well. Vertical and horizontal teaming. Have you come across those terms? Vertical and horizontal?
Yes.
So if you're a 4th grade teacher, horizontal teaming is what?
With other subjects.
With other 4th grade teachers. Vertical teaming? With 3rd and 5th grade teachers, right? There you go. I think the rest are there. Site-based decision making. Basically, this is one of the terms here, site-based management, but the idea is this, is that teachers, parents, and members of the community work together at a campus level to make decisions. We sometimes think just put it in the hands of principals. This is by law something that needs to be done at schools, and that is to be part of the SBDM. Again, enhancing professional knowledge, working on these things. This is, you can mark me off on this one for today, right? Making effective use of time. We're going over a little bit, sorry. Seeking to motivate student interest, networking with others. Again, professional development has a lot to do with enhancing ourselves. Again, this will somewhat come out on PPR now. The T-test is how you are evaluated on a yearly basis, sometimes semi-annual basis. And they're looking at these things. This is somewhat new over the last couple of years, but just please notice that this is exactly what we've gone through today. Active, successful student participation, learner instruction, learner-centered instruction, evaluation and feedback, to student discipline, etc. Okay, you don't have to worry about that part. Okay, I tell you what, should we just go into 13? Yes. And then those of you who wish to stay, we'll go over the last 6 questions. Okay, I will stay too. Best practices. This is the big thing. The educator shall not reveal confidential information concerning students unless disclosure serves professional services required by law. Now, okay, yeah, that sounds right. You know what this means? You can't be talking about students with your colleagues at school. You cannot say, that Matthew, you know, he's a special education kid, and for this I have to do that. You cannot do that even to your colleagues at school. You cannot be talking about students, especially specifically. Can you say, I have special education students in my class and it's difficult? Yes. Can you say that Matthew, that special education child, is driving me off a wall? No, you may not. That is confidential information that you're disclosing, and you can be held legally responsible for that. All children with disabilities, regardless of severity, are entitled to a free and public education. Right? LRE, least restrictive environment. You may want to write that down, you may not need to. Least restrictive environment, and that means that students with special needs cannot just be placed away, segregated from the rest of the community, the schooling community. They must be placed in a regular classroom. Students or schools must involve parents when they are designing their IEP. IEP, what does that stand for? Individual Education Plan. All special education students have an IEP, Individual Education Plan. ARD is the Admission Review and Dismissal Committee, parents, student translator if necessary, teacher, special education teacher, and principal. Lots of times the students are not involved, but the parent and an administrator must be involved, along with the special education teacher. I won't go into the specifics here, but basically the ARD, the Annual Review and Dismissal Committee, meets at least once a year to look at these IEPs to make sure that they're accommodated or modified to show what is needed for the student. Once that IEP is in place, that is a legal document. The IEP is a legal document that must be followed by the teacher in the classroom. Here are some things that are mentioned: allowing more time, decreasing the number of items for the student. I'm just going to make one comment about this. These are teaching strategies for students with special needs. What has been found out, if we go back and look at a lot of best teaching practices that are out there now, a lot of best teaching practices, many of them, if not all of them, have come out of special education research. Because we've seen that we need to treat children as individuals. And then we can apply it to the whole classroom. Look at this, cooperative learning. Is that just for special education students? That's for all. Peer tutoring, just for special education students? They started there, but it's for all students, etc. FERPA, family educational rights and privacy. It protects the privacy of parents and children. This has a lot to do with technology and with the giving of information. We cannot give information to people about students. And I know this sounds extreme, but if you're at home talking to your spouse and saying, I have this child, Matthew, who's a special needs child, and he does this and this and this, you could be held liable. You could be held responsible. You cannot give that information to anybody. Definitely to no one else in the community where they live, etc. You should avoid talking about students. You should avoid, and really, now there are laws about this, having children grade each other's work. Boy, when I was a kid, it happened all the time. Pass your paper back one, and the kid in the back, bring it up to the front. Okay, let's go over the answers, and here they are. And so the person behind me always knew what grade I got. Can't do that anymore. You cannot have children come in at recess time to help you grade papers. I mean, that used to be a common practice. I used to do that even as a teacher, years ago. Can't do that anymore. This is private information. You cannot talk about other students' grades to a parent of a child. And again, I used to see this a little bit. It bothered the heck out of me. I don't see it anymore. But, someone would come in and they would say, well, what about my child? Well, I know another child who got this. No, he got an 85 because, oh, you can't be doing that. You cannot be talking about other children's grades. You cannot be leaving them in plain view, which generally isn't a problem anymore because most things are online. I'm sorry?
Even in my fluency, when I do fluency with the kids, I don't even show them, can't show anything.
Right. Yeah, no, it's very private. I think back when I was at the University of Wisconsin, and we would take a test, and how would we find our grade? We'd go to the professor's office, and there were the last 4 digits of your social security number with that. No way. I mean, geez, that's just such private information. Social security numbers and, it used to be common practice, even names with grades. But then social security numbers, last 4 digits, can't do it. Okay, we talked about copies and fair use, so you'll have that. Okay, this is the one thing that I do want to mention here, though. Equipment can only be used outside the school for school business purposes. And this is tough. I mean, I think about it for myself. I have access to a laptop, I have access to a Chromebook, I have access to a school phone, etc. And it's very tempting at times. I'm traveling, I'm up in Austin, I'm in the hotel waiting for a presentation to begin. And you know, I get online and I check my AOL account. And I'm thinking, oh man, maybe I shouldn't do that. I don't do that anymore. Not on school property. Now I take my own Chromebook with me, right? If you're using school property, do not use it for personal use. You can't. I know it seems extreme, but boy, there's a record of it all over the place now too, right? Okay, teachers cannot gossip or share confidential information about teachers. Or I mean about students. But this is kind of what I was telling you earlier. Teachers can, be careful about your fellow teachers as well. But teachers can share information regarding students as long as the student cannot be identified. Again, you can say, you know, I have this child in my class and he's having a difficult time. He's a special education student and he's this and this and this, as long as you don't say Matthew. Right? Or Matthew Myers. Does that make sense? So you can talk about it, and hopefully it's a professional help to do it, but you cannot do it if you're going to identify. So, oh man, we're there. Thank you for your patience. Some of you are already out of here. I know, and I don't blame you. It's 4:05. But if you have a couple of minutes, I'll go over the last few questions with you. If you need to leave or want to leave, I'll respect that too. If you are leaving, I just want to say this. I really wish you the best of luck as teachers. It is a noble profession, and really, we need good teachers. So this test, PPR, you need to pass it. But you need to take this stuff to heart, too. This is really what it's all about, and I know you will. Okay? So those of you who need to leave or want to leave, go watch the Wisconsin Badgers playing Purdue. Thank you very much. Ding, ding, ding. Nicely done. Thanks. We'll see you later. Randy, you taking off? I'm going to miss you tremendously, man. I love you, man. Oh, that's been out of for a long time. Okay, those of you who are staying, let's do 12 and 13, or did you do it while I was talking?
Yes.
Somebody did it. Yeah. Okay, I tell you what, should I just give you the answers?
Yes.
Yeah, I love this go-getter class. Okay.
BDD.
Not quite. But 2 out of 3 ain't bad, as Meatloaf said, right? 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Number 34 is B. That is correct. 35, Martha. I love that name, Martha. Martha is D. That is correct. But 36 is A. Very good. I tell you what, let's go over 13 and then we can come back to this if you have questions. Yeah, 36 is A. The purpose and learning goals for assigning the research project. I tell you what, we'll come back to it, okay? Competency 13, ethics and legal issues. 37. Oh, I should tell you about a story, but only if you have time later on. 37 is B. Yes. 38 is C. And 39 is
C.
C.
You have to ask permission to
C. Yeah, that wasn't in here, but I will tell you that for special education, for language purposes, you don't need any parents' information or any parents' permission. Just do it. But for special education, in order to test that child, you need to get the parent permission first.
Shouldn't you observe them then? Like, you're out and then they have.
Well, what does 39 say at the beginning?
Oh, I didn't read that part. I'll take that one.
Okay, thank you. You're still not convinced of the other one.
No, I'm not.
We'll talk about
I
it.
said don't agree.
Okay, we'll talk about that. Okay, any comments, questions, or concerns about 13 and 12? Good luck to you all. 36 is what? 8. Okay, so 36. Before the school year begins, Austin meets with his mentor teacher to plan how to integrate library and technology skills throughout the year. He wants his 12th grade students to be able to complete their English research papers through the use of library resources and electronic means. After they complete the overarching plans for the research requirements, okay? So they've completed those. Okay, good luck to you. Thank you. Austin then asks to meet with the librarian to discuss appropriate tools and and processes for research. So to have a productive meeting, what information should he be prepared to share? Right? So he already has the overarching plans for the requirements. Take care, enjoy your morning. Okay, bless you. So what is he going to share with the why is he meeting with the librarian? Right. So what is he going to share with them? A list of other resources that they may use? No. That it wouldn't be librarian. He's going to ask, he wants a meeting with the librarian. See the likely learning style? No. I mean, that is information that he wants to know. Absolutely, to work with kids. But this is about the meeting with the librarian. His knowledge of how to use the internet. Why are you meeting with the librarian then? The purpose and learning goals for the assignment of the research project. You talk to the librarian and say, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, how can you help me? Thank you very much.
Yeah, because if that hurt you, come over with a letter.
Okay, here, we're going to have a knockdown drag out here.
Let's have a showdown.
Okay.
33. Okay. So, I don't understand why. Okay, so.
Okay. First of all, let me say, maybe this would make it clearer and maybe not. We kind of talked about it. Let's take out tags and let's put stuff.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna try to come on Monday.
Okay, so maybe that might make it clear. Maybe that's
So you had said for C, is good, describe the strength as indicated by the assessment results. Take as long discuss the result. So that was the good part, as results. But the bad part was address what needs improvement. That there's no point to how the teacher will address areas that need improvement because there's no time lapse and you're not going to tell the next teacher what to do.
Right. I mean, there are things that you could do, and I'm not saying, you know, I see it that way, that not necessarily that it's wrong, like nice meeting you, good luck to you. Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Well, good luck to you. It will be a good class if you do well. If you don't, then I don't know how effective. So, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but let me just say, you know, maybe this is one of those things where we could say, we had it up earlier, that maybe all the answers are correct, but there's one best one. I personally viewed this as incorrect just because Carolyn could not say how next year's teacher, and it doesn't say that, but this is how I interpreted it, that how the next year's teacher will address those areas that need improvement. When I see the word will, I think it's more futuristic, and so I know this is end of the year. Maybe I'm misinterpreting it myself.
Okay, because I'm interpreting it as how the teacher will address area that needs improvement, the same way as ways to work together. So it's the end of the year, there's a month left. She can work with the student and tell her, you can improve by doing this, you can improve by doing this. It's not necessarily saying,
so what's the difference between A and C in your mind? Is there any difference?
I think what she thinks is that both are the same. Like,
that's what I'm saying. There's no difference.